Kingdom Hearts Dark Road, a story about Xehanort on his dark road to becoming the Seeker of Darkness. This story follows a much younger Xehanort, 4 years younger than the one we're familiar with in Dream Drop Distance and Kingdom Hearts 3. This story released in June of this year and is offering a different style of storytelling than what we're used to in episodic releases. We so far are 2 episodes into Kingdom Hearts Dark Road and some pretty interesting things have already happened. You could say that one of the cutscenes that open up Remind with the conversation between the Master of Masters and young Xehanort was a sort of teaser or introduction to Kingdom Hearts Dark Road in general. This scene discussed things about Xehanort and his motives, like about how he thinks the world should be ruled by darkness, the world needs order, and although while having these thoughts, he's still a Keyblade wielder in training, waiting for his exam. The story structure of Dark Road so far, at least as dictated by these previous 2 episodes, begins with Xehanort monologuing about his life as a Keyblade wielder and overall where his headspace is. We previously knew that Xehanort didn't like his home at Destiny Islands for a similar reason as Riku in Kingdom Hearts 1. He didn't like this box he was in, though in episode 2 he talks about how he just simply moved on from one box to another when becoming a Keyblade wielder and going to Scarlet Kylum. Despite having friends and being able to traverse the world, he was stuck in a routine, though it seems like he's trying to find value in these times in some way by looking at things a little differently. What takes up the bulk of these story updates is traveling throughout worlds and learning about the world order and are trying to find the 7 upperclassmen who had been missing. Additionally, the ending of the last 2 story updates have ended in a time skip showing 4 years later of current events. We know of this to be the estimated time frame Xehanort encounters the Master of Masters and joins the Reorganization 13. You can mostly tell this by the hair difference and his obvious ties to darkness in these scenes. In the first episode, we find out that 4 of the new friends Xehanort had trained with are now gone, and he sets off on his own little journey, it seems, before the exam is to happen. Then in episode 2, it is shown that he now sees the darkness encompassing people, showing his ties to the darkness getting stronger and stronger. Bizarrely enough though, this ties into a line from the Master of Master when he points out how Xehanort must have seen a lot of darkness in Remind. We have yet to see Beyond Wonderland in regards to Xehanort's travels, but I'm sure we will, so this line fits perfectly for this scene at the moment. This is a weird story structure because it makes the end goal a little unclear. If every story update is always 4 years ahead, then the rest of the story will take forever to catch up to this, which could be what they intend because Unit Cross has been going on for years at this point and Dark Road is still in its early phases. Maybe at some point the story will just pad itself out and tell us nothing important happens during this time frame, as we just completely time skip covering these segments 4 years later throughout the entire update instead of just the ending. The clearest route for where the story might lead could be a Dark Road version of the encounter with young Xehanort and the Master, though it feels like that's something that might happen sooner rather than later, and I'm expecting Dark Road to last at least a solid year or 2, likely more. So with this assumption and logic, the Master of Masters is destined to appear in Kingdom Hearts Dark Road, isn't he? This means eventually, while Xehanort is on what seems to be his world tour before his Mark of Master exam, he'll run into the Master, and that is something I can't wait to see happen. There's no clear indicators that young Xehanort meets the Master ever again after that one encounter, though for the encounter to have been made in the first place, it would mean the Master would be watching young Xehanort, so he's always watching. That's how the Book of Prophecies exists after all, so we know that to be true. But him being there physically is the bizarre part, because that scene with young Xehanort chronologically at the moment is the first we see of the Master after his his disappearance in Kingdom Hearts Key back cover. This means he's around somewhere. Maybe he's body hopping like Luxu, or maybe his being is beyond that. But he might have a big role to play in this game, and don't forget Luxu is around somewhere as well. That 7th classmate is very suspicious, and Bragi is suspiciously close to the name Brig as well. I know it has other meanings, but still. So Luxu could be anywhere. We know he was keeping an eye on that Keyblade of his. Dark Road could end the second Young Xehanort joins the reorganization, or it could go way past that. What if we see a middle-aged Xehanort? What if we see a young Xehanort in his 20s or 30s? It kind of seems like Melody of Memories might be touching upon a apprentice Xehanort a lot more as well, potentially while simultaneously telling a story about Kairi. There's so much of Xehanort's story that we don't know. We knew his motives, but not how he came to have those motives, or who can be responsible. This goes for Ericus as well, because although the story stars Xehanort as the protag, Ericus is of interest as well. There's a reason Ericus didn't hold any hatred for Xehanort in the end of Kingdom Hearts 3. It's because he was still his friend and grew up with him, still considered him those things. You could say he understands where Xehanort's coming from. We don't know how big of a role Ericus plays in this dark road that Xehanort is on, but it's definitely clear he plays a part. Maybe that order that Xehanort wanted to establish, that leader he wanted to be, was so he wouldn't have to fight the darkness in the world, but rather control it, all because he saw what happened to his friends so early on in his life. Though during all this, characters like Luxu and the Master were the real reasons Xehanort was the way he was. He had dark thoughts before, yes, but without these characters, would he really have been as evil as he turned out to be? I mean, Xehanort was willing to let the exam decide, like in that cutscene with the Master, but the Master was like, no, and kind of convinced him otherwise, but we don't know where that's going to head. We don't know if Xehanort still takes his exam, or if he decides to skip out on it. I mean, he is referred to as Master Xehanort, so it might be weird otherwise, but we'll see. Maybe we get a reveal that what happened to all his friends was caused by Luxu or the Master killing them off without his knowledge, maybe by summoning some super powerful Heartless or doing the deed themselves. We might see a lot of characters show up and influence Xehanort down this dark road, directly, indirectly. There's people and things happening everywhere that are all influencing Xehanort and his emotions. His friends, deaths maybe one, the Master maybe another, and even the darkness he sees in the worlds he visits, likely the conversations he has with a friend while playing chess. They all are a part of this path he's on. Since we already know what he becomes, it makes it that much more interesting to see how he becomes the Seeker of Darkness, how he becomes what he becomes, how his friends perish, how he met the Master, and just about everything. Dark Road's story is almost guaranteed to never have a completely dull moment just because Xehanort is on the screen. It's a similar effect that Sora has wherever he is. In the same way that Sora can always brighten up a room, Xehanort can always add a more serious tone to it. Xehanort's Dark Road doesn't start when his friends pass on. It starts when he's on Destiny Islands. The second he walks through the Dark Corridor, his journey begins, and I'll be around for every second of it.